Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton here with Brandon. We are joined once again by our special guest, Clinton Chan, who played in the Houston Regional this last weekend with Slime. We're definitely going to talk about Houston and how well both Clinton and Slime did at that event. First, real quick, let's run through the two other tournaments that have taken place since the last time we talked. April 23rd, 2019, played in the Philippines. Dal 8 Standby, 8 Choice Bang Dream, 8 Win Sword Art taking first. Kanata Marin, Choice Pants Dal, and Shot Choice Bang Dream. Dual Laners Pachin, Tokyo Revengers, the normal Damachi list, and a Standby Bar MTI took third. 8 Standby Quince, 8 Standby Dal, and Kanata Marin Hololive taking fourth. These smaller regionals, both Philippines and France, which we'll talk about in a second, featured a lot of stuff that maybe won't see as much play in the bigger regionals, but definitely some stuff worth talking about. Sword Art 8 Wind is, I think, the most obvious, kind of double take thing here, with Alice being not being legal for play until the next round of tournaments. To see kind of the OG Alice list kind of make a last stand here in the Philippines and get a tournament win is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of different decks than you might expect, but at the same time, they're also decks that are pretty intentional for the local metas that they're there.
And that's the other thing, right? Like these are, especially in these places where, this is probably the only regional a lot of these guys are going to go to. They know what they're playing into, right? These are the guys that they'll see at their local metas, and they're pretty familiar with what's being played, so they might make choices that reflect that. But looking at the rest of top eight, you see, a classic Love Life Sunshine. You see the Zekken Last Shot SAO build, more Bang Dream. There's Goblin Slayer here. There's one SDS, and that's another thing that is definitely worth paying attention to. Is these tournaments that we're going to talk about today are the first ones post ban list, so we'll see how people have responded to the hit specifically against SDS. Like the list obviously isn't going to change all that much, and we kind of expected that they would lean more into the Merlin and the King CX swap specifically. And we see that here in this list from the Philippines, and we'll look more into that when we look at more tournaments. But is there anything else from either of you that stands out in top eight from the Philippines?
The only thing that's really worth noting here is in the Philippines, especially, that all of the Hololive builds are all Kanata Marine.
Yeah, that is definitely worth noting, especially because we've seen some other stuff start to try to rise. The Sora in particular has been seeing more play, but we didn't see that there. Also, and I think we mentioned this before, MTI is really starting to lean more into the bar stuff, at least in part, so that they can play the Sylph money counter.
Well, one of the things was that Randall put out his deck list with the 3 bar in it. And ever since he put that out, we've seen a lot more people kind of begin to flock to that, especially as MTI begins to kind of struggle a little bit with the power game. That kind of bar combo coming in seemingly helps with a lot of those issues.
So moving on to France. France was a very weird one. France has a lot of fun stuff going on. Um, Okayu Kanata Marine, 8 Salvage, Quince, and Dual Laners taking the win. Love Life Sunshine with 2 Soul Triggers, Kanata Marine, and 8 Standby Quince in second. Pantsbook Slime, 8 Standby Quince, Kanata Marine in third. Another Dual Laners, Escanor, and 8 Standby Quince in fourth. So honestly, outside of Love Life Sunshine, there's not a whole lot that's off meta here. But then you look at the rest of top eight, and things start to go a little haywire. You've got an AOT deck that runs the old Mikasa top end with the new Mikasa level 1. You have Haruhi, Stock Soul Salvage. It doesn't run the new combo from the power up set, but Haruhi gets a top in 2023, which immediately makes this the best regional possible. We also see Kantai, which is something that we haven't seen in a very long time. Dragon Maid, the choice top end, gets its first top as well. A bar into choice. A couple of different Rushias. One with the Watame level 1 And then we have another 8-bar Dragon Maid and another 8-winged Sorter as well. So a lot of weird stuff in that 5 through 8 tier from France, but that's sort of the expected against small regional. Not to take anything away from any of those players. Like obviously, getting a top is getting a top, right? But obviously there are reasons why we don't see Kantai and Haruhi making it to top tables regularly. But these small regionals are a chance for those decks to showcase what they can do. And they got their tops, which is really fun. But yeah, as far as like what we may or may not expect, top 4 looks very much like something we would expect, except maybe more dual laners.
I like to mention that in Europe, usually, it's a region where dual laners is more popular, and a surprise, result of Hololive because historically, Europe hates Kanata Marine. Like they
Hmm.
super shy against it. So it's interesting to see that this was very not only very prevalent, was very successful. Because usually a lot of the European guys, tour through all the different European events. So maybe that a bigger group just weren't able to go to this one specifically due to various reasons.
If you look at the tournament results from earlier events, you just don't see as much Kanata Marine in some of the European events. Like if you go up to Germany, you see a lot more Coronet, you see Watson, you still see the Marine top end because it's Marine, but you don't see as much Kanata. They definitely lean into it less. And we saw that last year too, right? We saw that um, in the singles regionals after Hololive came out in particular, that there was a lot less Kanata kind of per capita than there were in other regions. So that's kind of it for France, I think. Once again, that Escanor that finished fourth leaned more into the King and the Merlin. So if we're watching to see what people are doing to make those adjustments with SDS, it looks like those are the primary adjustments. Heading into Houston now, we don't have all the results for Houston yet, but we have most of them. We do know all of the decks that made top 8, but we only know finishing positions of about 2/3 of them. Winning was Escanor, Slime, and Bang Dream with the Christmas Kasumi into the Star Kasumi combo. Second place was also Escanor, also Slime, but with Coronet Marine. Third place, 8 Standby Quince, another Escanor, and Danmachi. Fourth place, the only thing we know of right now is OKU Sora.
Ooh, I actually know those decks because we played them in top 8. Seat A was, red, blue, Danmachi. Then, then B's correct with Okayu, Sora, Marine. And then third was Nino 8 Standby Quince.
Okay. So this fourth place Sora also had Marine in it then.
Yeah, gotta finish the game somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we're seeing that more, right? Like we're seeing that more and more with the people who are playing Sora. They're still teching in Marines because you can get away with it, right? Because Marine only costs you like 4 stock. So if you're able to extend the game, especially by an extra turn, by having the Sora down, it gives you plenty of time to get what you need to get the Marine together. Because you don't need much. You need 4 stock and like a single Marine to start things going and get into the rest of your Marine stuff. Maybe if you have 2 of them, or if you have the Marine and the salvage in hand, but you don't need very much. So it works very nicely with the Sora, especially when you get that extra turn. So looking at top 4, then we're looking at 3 Slimes and 3 Escanors. The first large regional, 60 teams after it got restricted.
I would say the restrictions were very minor on it. It just took away, a big consistency tool at the very end of the game, not
Mhm.
anywhere through the beginning and the middle. And there's enough, suitable options that although cost, one more card and resource, that essentially almost does the same thing.
Yeah, it kind of that extra sculpt potentially.
It's definitely the kind of thing that was only going to make it slightly less consistent and maybe a little bit less powerful at the top because it makes it harder for them to get both bounces and top checks. So I want to pass it off to you, Clinton, because you were actually obviously at this event. Talk about because you were on Slime. Talk about your run and kind of the stuff that you saw and how you felt about playing into this field.
Yeah, so since I was traveling from out of town, I didn't have, a good sense of what this regional meta was. But I took the what I learned from the Georgia event and I switched up the seat positioning of my team, where usually I would be at C. I moved myself to B, playing the slime deck, then kept seven deadly slime sins in the A side, and then we had the Hollow Life deck at C, because I feel like you're more likely to play against the more offbeat deck at C, and that should be was a 1k1 with a lot more healing, especially that specific Hollow Life build, that it would flourish there. And then in second, I just felt like that was more likely to run into what I thought would have been more popular of the two most popular decks of Seven Deadly Sins and Quince slash Hollow Life. So I was able to get our team into much more favorable matchups this time, and we were able to do pretty well in Swiss. We were undefeated, and then we were able to go into top cut as the first seed.
Oh wow, nice.
So, what kind of stuff did you run into in Swiss? What
Ah,
were you
so
guys
the
seeing a
first two
lot?
rounds I played against some super random stuff. Yeah, so round one I played against Green Gurren Lagann, and I'm like, wow, I think I'm like one of like three people in this whole room that actually knows what these cards do, because I actually own this set. And then round two, I played against blue green or green blue JoJo's, and I barely knew what those cards did, so I had to read them one by one.
One of the things I love about the way that the season is set up is because we have trios in the spring. I don't want to say it's a less competitive event, but it is, right? Like, there's no invitation to Worlds on the line. It's a team format. It allows people to be comfortable taking stuff that they would not take to, a very, very serious event. And you get to see all kinds of fun stuff. And it also forces you to be ready to play into basically anything because you have no idea what you're going to pair into round one.
Yeah, exactly. So so it was good to be able to stay on my toes. And I like, most teams, they pretty much either plan well in advance and, they pick out what meta decks and the people who think they're best able to play it in their teams. Or, you just have people that just pick what they feel comfortable or like playing the best, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then round three, I played against the Gold Bar Yotsuba level 1 combo with the Standby Nino level 3 combo, Quince deck.
Interesting.
Then round four, I played against a Mashoku deck that was 8 standby, but it chose the tap counter.
Okay.
Round five, I played in the mirror against the team that ended up beating us for first place. Spoiler alert! And I won that match. I won that mirrored that matchup that time. And then round six, I played against Seven Deadly Sins, the Escanor deck that I believe they placed third.
What's that matchup like for you as a slime player? Like, because, you obviously you're doing your memory compression thing, you're healing down all the stuff that slime does. And then Escanor comes up and says, just gonna burn you for one over and over again. Does your approach change into that matchup at all? Or do you just kind of continue to do what you do and bank on canceling enough of those burn ones?
Oh, so the key is, like I tell Brandon the times I've seen him, is that you pretty much always do the same thing. I might sandbag my level one Shizu combo until after my opponent hit level one and put the Meliodases on the board first, so I could just run them over. And then you just stick with your game plan of just compressing and healing at two. And then, you know, since they're always doing wild swings of considerably higher damage, which plays into your end of being more likely to cancel it, and then you just build a ever growing bigger damage discrepancy between the seven deadly sin deck, where you're forcing them at level three to go into their Escanor combo first, and they're very unlikely to ever kill you from like 2-2 to 2-4 in that deck. And then you just grind it down, finish them by either just healing down and running over the Escanors, or you actually go for the burning combo to finish them off.
That makes sense.
Realistically, they're only probably getting Escanor off once, right? So they have to pick and choose when they do it. So if you force them into doing it before they're actually really ready for it, it's hard to recover from that.
And that's the thing with the book top end is that it can kill you. Like, it's not hard to get 3 copies of it down. It swings really cheap and it swings a lot. So, if you're at 3-0, 4-3, 4-3, 4-3, that has a pretty high likelihood of killing you.
Yeah, especially since especially a post Escanor turn, they're very vulnerable defensively because they wanted to trigger those climaxes. They played
Mhm.
one. They're gonna have some. Like they're not gonna have that many cancels available to them at a high percentage.
So after the Escanor matchup, what did you see next?
After the Escanor matchup, we went into top eight. The deck check took longer than usual, where one of the players had a legal deck lock list of 50 cards, but the physical deck that they presented was 51 cards.
Oh no.
So that team got disqualified. But since ninth place left, which advice for everybody, you're ninth through 10th. I would definitely not leave the tournament
Right.
until deck checks are done. So they left. So the refresh point guys who were 10th place, they were able to take advantage of that. They passed their deck check and they played us in top eight. So I was like, oh no, I'm like, we got first seed and then we got punished into playing them, and then my matchup in top eight was the Caillou Sora Marine deck, piloted by my good friend Steven. So that matchup, I'm like, oh, I hate this matchup because there's only one way you ever play this, because eventually the Soras will come out, and hopefully by then you did enough. You put your deck in a good enough position where they have to direct you for fours and fives, and either you do what your deck's supposed to do and cancel them, or you just eat it, and you were just gonna lose those games anyway.
Right.
So early on, I could tell that he was just a lot of climaxes, but I was able to, but we both have like similar refresh points where he didn't, take too much damage from it. And, in the middle game, the plan went exactly like as I drawn it up, where he got into the triple Sora change and I was able to triple cancel those direct attacks. And then he only had me under the gold bar minus soul pressure for a turn. And then I was able to get him to three first, two Marines. I believe it was two Marines wasn't enough to finish me. You know, we were close in damage, like in the mid threes, but I was able to survive a double Marine turn, and then I was just able to do 1 point and refresh to win that game. And then of note, Broderick on AC lost to the Mirror, which is going to be a reoccurring theme in this top eight. And then see Yue playing Corone Marine was also playing against Slime, and I'm like, so in that matchup, the Slime player was able to just cancel a lot early, and Yue was able to hang in there by playing a lot. 'Cause his Hollow Live deck plays a lot of early play healers like the Polka and Suisei,
Yeah.
and was able to grind his opponent's hand down, and he was just running out of resources, and he was able to survive and was able to finish with time running really close, was able to find those last few points to win the matchup and allow us to advance.
Mm. Especially with because I assume again that with this regional that time was a double loss.
Yeah, so in Swiss, it's a double loss if a game cannot finish within the +3 turns or time, or the 10-minute extension, whatever comes first. But then at top eight, it goes to the damage comparison.
Okay,
Mhm.
good.
Then in top four, we played against a team of local Texans with Riaz Mohammed in the B slot. So I had the pleasure of playing him, and basically this playing against the same deck again.
Mhm.
So in our game, it's basically same. Like, I got to go through this again, and then I guess it was a long tournament. And he's been play testing the Yuna minus Soul build from the new SAO deck. That when he went for his Sora change turn, he realized and he even told to me, "Oh, I made a grave mistake," and put out the three Soras. Be like, this combo needs a full board to activate.
Oh no!
So not only did he not get the minus soul, he didn't even get the extra power. And this all stemmed from because he had a the drop searcher Miko that's oversized, but it has the negative effect of giving all your opponent's characters two encore
Yeah.
instead of the normal three. So instead of pushing that up to the back, he just overplayed it. And then when he
Oh.
went to the change and realized he didn't have a full board,
Oh,
So not only was I able to drop 2 early outs of my own and my refreshing Rimuru level 2, I ran over all 3 Soras and I landed 8 points of damage.
Oh.
Yeah, so I was pretty so, I was gifted that game, which I was pretty happy about. And then Broderick lost his, A-seat matchup because he ate, like, 6 points of damage, and the bottom 5 cards of his deck were all
Oh,
climaxes.
no.
And then in the Quince versus Hololive matchup, Yue was losing board most of the game, and when he was at 3-0, his opponent was at 3-0, who had 2 level 3 Ninos. He double leveled down these Wolf and Ayame level 3 and forced them down to the 2/2s that had Hang On Core with the earlier climax combo. Then
Mhm.
was able to survive the next turn and was able to find enough damage to win the game.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that was another nail biter, in top 4.
So then in the final, there were two mirror matches.
Correct.
Broderick was in the Escanor mirror match. You had the Slime mirror, and then it was Bang Dream versus Hololive in CC. And obviously, you guys finished second, so we know how it ends. But how did it go?
So when we played them in Swiss earlier, the results were we won the Slime and Seven Deadly Sin mirror, and then lost the Bang Dream Hololive matchup. And then in finals, it was flipped around where we lost the mirror and then we won the Hololive side. So I would say in my game, I would say I was the person who was ahead on getting memory and stock, and I think also was hand and board too. But I had the awful problem where you're running too well, where you increase your chance of being unlucky. As ridiculous as that sounds, because after I did a refresh with my 2-1 Rimuru, I triggered 2 climaxes because a higher chance of doing so, and then he canceled that damage, and then I ate that damage, and then that
Mhm.
one turn swing following was just too much to come back from.
Mm.
And you two both would know a thing or two about slime mirrors in top eight. That's that's just how that one goes. Honestly, like it's almost like whoever doesn't trigger, like in a closely contested mirror of players with comparable skill for slime specifically, is what it feels like, at least from like an outside
Yeah,
perspective.
whoever doesn't trigger and who does cancel wins that game, especially in that level 2 range, because it really, because whoever goes to 3 first, if the other person is at 2 or low 2s, like
Mhm.
it's really hard to get that damage in to beat them if states are comparable.
I know that, like, for me, as someone who has had to play into slime many, many times, pushing slime into 3-0 is so, so important. Like if you have an opportunity to push slime into 3-0, I don't care if you have to side, I don't care what you have to do. If you can find a way to make it happen, that is more important than pretty much anything else, I think, in that matchup. Because if you let slime stay at 2-6, all of a sudden slime's at 2-4 again, and they're 8 out of 20 and saying, do it again. But if you can find a way to get them into 3, that starts their clock, right? They have to kill you like as soon as possible.
Without being in a vulnerable position from dying from them being at
Yeah,
3-2.
yeah.
Right. So that's Houston. How do you think that Houston compared to Georgia from earlier in the season? You were in Georgia on April 2nd. You were in Houston 4 weeks later. How would you say that those two tournaments compared to each other?
Let's see. So Houston was about, a little under 20%, larger.
Hmm.
I felt that although, you see a bunch of quintuplets sprinkled here and there, it wasn't as dominant as it was in the other tournament, I feel.
Hmm.
And then for the most part, although a lot of decks are prevalent and represented, it felt pretty open.
Hmm.
It's like if you had a legitimate, like A tier or whatever, however we describe it, like it was feasible that it could, make a showing in top 8.
7, 8 different sets. 9 because
Like a Dragon Maid is one of the
yeah,
top 8 decks.
yeah, we alluded to this earlier. We don't have all of top 8 necessarily like finalized in all of their slots, but we do have the breakdown. Whatever's on screen is going to be the most updated thing that we have. But yeah, 9 different sets, including another Dragon Maid. So Dragon Maid actually has made 4 appearances in a top 8 over the course of the season now, including the 2 that it got in France as well. So good day for Dragon Maid all around on both continents.
And that top 8 Dragon Maid deck, I think it played the Toru level 3 combo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing both. We're seeing both because they're both good, right? And with the Toru choice, you're basically deciding on um specific um like your specific damage numbers. Whereas with Ilalu, you are focused on damage potential and high ceiling. So like depending on your playstyle, depending on what you want to present at level 3, you can play either of those. They're both, reasonably viable.
Every swing for Toru is a swing for lethal.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why we've seen 2 Torus and 2 Ilalus. So that's that for Houston. Next on the calendar is Mexico City next Sunday, and then the following week, Madrid and Chicago. We will be in Chicago, so we will have a tournament report on that. And of course, Clinton will be in his own backyard, so he will be there as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna go try to win this 3v3 title in Chicago 4 times in a row.
Oh my gosh. So moving on from the Springfest calendar, let's have a quick look at the release schedule. Not a whole lot to talk about. They did an English announcement stream last week, but frankly, that most of what they covered was stuff we already knew. The only thing they really added was Lycoris Recoil will come to English. They didn't give us a date. They also did finally tell us that Guilty Gear Strive will come out in the winter. However, they announced before the stream, and I don't think we talked about this here yet, that Revue Starlight's movie set will come out September 29th. It will not be, I don't think anyone thinks particularly relevant. However, it does make Relive a whole lot better. Like Relive on its own wasn't going to do much for Revue Starlight, but having the movie set means that Revue Starlight will at least have a much more playable deck as opposed to what it would have if it never got its 3rd set. So we will be getting Revue Starlight's movie set on September 29th. We have a date for that. Still waiting on dates for Chainsaw Man, Spy Family, Azure Lane, and Lycoris Recoil. The next set that comes out will be Psychono Flat later this week. It should be legal for Taiwan and Puerto Rico. That's the first weekend it'll be legal. It is the 20th and 21st. Not that it's going to have a massive effect on the meta, but there you go. I think that's it. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? I think that's everything.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Gotta prepare for the impending waves and wave of SAO decks.
But it doesn't even run that card. The attacks and waves.
It'd be funny if it could.
I know, right?
But that's it. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Clinton, for being here as well. Anything you want to shout out as we wrap this up?
Yeah, I would just, like to shout out to the whole Texas crew. Know many people there. They're a good community. They play hard. I like to shout outs to Refresh Point guys who are able to not only sneak it in to top 8 because of 10th, but then play us and then shout outs to the winners, Oliver, Kevin, and Nico. Definitely played well and definitely deserve to win.
We'll be back on Thursday with 5 cards, 5 minutes, I believe, for Psychono. The following week, Brandon will have a deck tech for Psychono. We'll have gameplay for that the following Thursday. And in 2 weeks, we'll be back talking about Mexico City, Madrid, and Chicago. But that's all we've got for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again, Clinton, for being here as well. Until next time, when we talk about Alice a lot, please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.